One of the greatest fears I have in attempting a cross-country bicycle ride was not finishing it. Not only not finishing in Key West, but also not being able to share the stories of all the inspiring people we met along the way. We set out with two hefty goals: complete a cross-country bicycle ride from Newport Beach, California to Key West, Florida, and to collect environmental perspective from the regions we visit. So far we've done that up to this point in New Orleans, Louisiana. In southern Nevada, one of the driest places on Earth, we learned how they managed to survive in a desert with 4 inches of rain per year. In El Paso, Texas, we learned about air quality and how it relates to our health. In New Orleans, we met with some top regional scientists who spoke about 2 major threats to the coast of Louisiana: erosion and the dead zone. I've also been on the lookout for environmental action. It may seem like a pretty broad approach, but not surprisingly, I've been inspired seeing people all over the southern tier taking environmental action into their own hands. In southern Arizona, we met with kids who take pride in turning out the lights to conserve electricity. And in Sierra Blanca, we got to take a big, stinky whiff of the poo-poo choo-choo. A focus theme we've explored a little on this bike ride is spirituality and religion, and how they relate to environmental conservation. Some spiritual perspective came by way of the Native American Apache tribe in San Carlos, Arizona. And in episode 3, we heard from several different Christian perspectives that link environmental stewardship to passages in the Bible, and also how God's will is linked to a changing climate. Lucky for us, we get to jump right back into the spiritual side of things on Easter Sunday in Autumn Park, New Orleans. We're headed to meet the Crescent City Swamp Witches.
My name is Reverend Velvet Reith. I'm pastor of Covenant at the Pentacle Wiccan Church here in New Orleans, Louisiana, and you are in Autumn Park, the park where my ancestors played in the 1800s. My ancestors who were Irish witches. We're Swamp Witches. It's the name of my circle, the Crescent Circle Swamp Witches. We were here, we'll be here. Body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. We don't have one sacred book. All books are sacred to us, even bad ones. It's the price, the freedom to read, to learn, to view whatever you choose to view, whether we like it or not. We work from an agrarian calendar. And for us, we call that the Wheel of the Year. We have 8 Sabbats. They're harvest festivals, including the solstices and equinoxes. And we work to align our energies and the way that we live our life in tune with the universe and with the seasons of the earth. Many of our principles are based on ancient traditions where they, in matrilineous cultures, they had respect for the earth and for one another, and the women and the men were equal in the things that they could do, or at the very least equivalent, and that's what we teach. Our deity is in fact in the Trinity and is biblical. We are the children of the Elohim, the Father, Son, the Holy Spirit, which is the goddess. And so we pray to a divine mother, the mother of all things, and we act in accord to that. Our thoughts being that, and our behaviors being that mothers don't destroy their children as a rule, and mothers will reprimand their children. So for us, the weather we're having, the ways that we're treating the planet right now, you can account for it.
Knowing that the birds have a spirit, the trees have a spirit, the water has a spirit, the air has a spirit. And that's what's really important. And I think that it's not only a Native American teaching, it's got to be a world teaching.
The worse the war gets, the worse those things get over there, the more involved we become, the more waste, the more harm, the more we have the fires, the more we have the floods, the more we have the rain. And for us, it's the mama goddess going, if you want destruction, I can show you some. Now get in there and clean your room.
Often Wicca is seen as being taboo, or way out of stream with the mainstream. But from my observation, they pray to a divine goddess that is Mother Earth. They see the planet as a living thing and tread upon it with care.
You also have travel, which is very interesting, and movement, okay? Have the water. And you came to New Orleans, so yeah, that's kind of cool too.
Yeah.
And you have spirals, which the spiral represents life for us and the circumstances in life. You know, then eventually what you do, you see again.
One witch that we met took environmental action to an entirely new level to deal with what she sees as the biggest threat to the environment: overpopulation.
On Halloween, I go down to the quarter and I hand out condoms. Don't reproduce. Sex is for recreation and not procreation. I've stood on the front lines at abortion clinics and escorted people in. I've worked at clinics. I walk the walk. I don't just say, well, I'm all in favor of other people not having children. No. I had a tubal ligation when I was 20 years old because I knew I did not want any children for environmental reasons and for personal reasons. So I'm walking the walk. And I support every other woman who wants to just not be reduced to her biological capacity to have that right.
What's your ideal gift for a baby shower?
Condoms! More condoms!
While we're on the topic of overpopulation, let's see what the Muslim and Jewish faiths say about it.
The first commandment to human beings was peru or vu, was to be fruitful and multiply. And that the second commandment to human beings was to work the earth and to protect it. So there's a limit to being fruitful and multiplying. Jewish tradition understands the fulfillment of the commandment to be fruitful and multiply essentially to replace yourself. So if a man and a woman have 2 children, they have fulfilled their obligation of being fruitful and multiplying. If they go beyond that, okay. The real question is, can you honestly and adequately afford, both in terms of material ability, emotional ability, can you stretch your household and your patience and your attention that far, and what's the impact on your community and on God's creation? And if you're being fruitful and multiplying to the point where you are violating the second requirement to guard the earth, then there's no piety, there's no benefit, there's no positive impact of having fulfilled the first one.
The Islamic view is that there is not really a problem in terms of overpopulation, but in terms of wasting and misusing resources. One important doctrine that we touch a lot about in Islam, and that is God consider wasting the act of the devil. That we have to use things in a very responsible manner, and the resources that He provided are enough to go around for everybody and even more. So we do not see in Islam that just because the mere existence of human beings, it's a zero-sum game with the environment. But the human beings can improve and grow and expand the resources available in the environment with the proper care and use. The problem, however, is in wasting.
And we'll hear more from the Jewish and Muslim perspective when we get into the heart of Florida. Meeting Velvet and the Crescent City Swamp Witches on Easter Sunday was an unforgettable way to spend the day. They would be the last people we met in the state of Louisiana before making our way towards the border of Mississippi, specifically to a place called Turkey Creek. So what makes Turkey Creek so special?
Basically, it's just an old settlement that was started by slaves, after the Civil War. People have lived there continuously since that time, in relative isolation, until this big economic boom that hit the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Ended up situating the community in the middle of a big old casino-driven economy. And a dollar-driven, irrational growth pattern.
It's been threatened by industry and pollution, from, the growth of the towns around it. These people have been tucked back in here doing their thing for 140 years. Hope to continue doing that. It's increasingly difficult as development upstream kind of messes up this creek and the wildlife that lives here. We've lost a lot of wetlands. There's more water coming through than ever. So there's erosion problems.
Anybody who lives on the Gulf Coastal Plain or who seeks to impact life or the environment on the Gulf Coastal Plain of North America, if they don't understand water, in its various configurations and implications on the Gulf coastal plain of North America, they need to go home or go somewhere else.
The residents of Turkey Creek lived mostly undisturbed from 1866 until the 1980s, when an ordinance was passed at the local level that required residents to cap personal water wells on their land. Since that time, all sorts of developments threaten their way of life: airport expansion, deforestation, and wetland destruction.
People have fished back here, worshipped back here, and been baptized in this stream, swam in this stream, caught their food, made their livelihood right here in these woods.
And this is what drew our bicycle ride to this area. To combat these things, the community formed a group called the Turkey Creek Community Initiatives.
Turkey Creek Community Initiatives is a very small community-based nonprofit engaged in sort of the comprehensive community-based assessment and revitalization of the historic Turkey Creek community and larger watershed of coastal Harrison County, Mississippi.
Here at Turkey Creek Community Initiatives, my job is an environmental projects coordinator. Mostly we work on like wetlands advocacy, blocking, wetland fill permits, trying to protect the sensitive ecosystem or what's left of it.
What kind of action has TCCI taken to stop the erosion from occurring?
We've been working on some native plant nurseries. We'll be planting some live oak trees, some bald cypress, and some red maple that were donated by the Arbor Day Foundation. We're digging some nurseries in an area that's been filled in with concrete and various types of soil in an effort to make a playing field that kind of holds too much water and doesn't do much good. So we're using parts of that. We've got a tractor that we borrowed from across town, a disc we borrowed from another part of town.
I'm impressed. This is exactly the kind of environmental action that we've been looking for. As we learned in the last episode, erosion is a threat to all of the states surrounding the Gulf of Mexico. By planting trees and shrubbery, TCCI is slowing the rate of erosion. Tree roots and plants help to ensure that soil stays in place and does not wash out to the ocean.
It's a non-stop process of learning, first of all, to find out what the threats to your community are. Because they're around every corner, man. There's so much money flying around and so many different ideas of what represents progress or what is a good idea that you stay pretty busy doing just that. And then beyond that, we just try to let it be known that we care enough to educate people about what's ultimately not just assets in our own backyard, but something that's like the creek, that's a public asset for anybody who ever passes through, even if it's just for a half an hour.
At this point in the cross-country trek, the bike riding has become really enjoyable. Mike and I haven't seen a mountain or hill in weeks, which means flat roads, which also means more progress per day. Right now we're averaging about 60 miles per day, compared to 30 to 50 when we were moving across Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and a lot of Texas. Since Mike and I are following the Gulf of Mexico, our route through the state of Mississippi is relatively short, only 2 days with the interviews we captured. As we approach Mobile, Alabama, we're starting to hear about a new global call to take action on climate change, something called Earth Hour. If you haven't heard of Earth Hour, the idea is that you turn everything off at night for 1 hour. Use less electricity, less gasoline, less everything. Apparently, everybody's getting involved in this event. Google is turning their homepage black as a way to promote and remind people to act. McDonald's is going to turn off their lights on their golden arches. Around the world, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, the CN Tower in Toronto, the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Colosseum in Rome will all be dark as symbols of hope for action on climate change. What can Mike and I expect to see in Mobile, Alabama? Have they heard about the call to action? Will there be a location participating in the event?
Well, we're always looking for something new to do in Mobile, and it's sad because a lot of people complain about how there's not a lot to do sometimes. So whenever, radio stations or whatever put on events like this, we're hoping to have people turn out because something different. And unfortunately, we didn't have a big turnout tonight, which is sad to say.
A small storm blew through from about 4 to 7. This may have had an effect on the turnout of people. A group of about 100 people met up at Cathedral Square in downtown Mobile.
Oh, we came with the expectation that the whole Midtown area would be dark, no power on, and candles would be the only light, and they were actually using a amplifier for sound for the music, and it was a little disappointing.
Yeah.
In between songs or something, you know, giving some ideas to people on how they can use less energy each day, but nothing was spoken about that.
This event got Mike and I thinking that Earth Hour was a great way to try to make more people aware that actions as consumers have lasting effects on the planet. It has a similar intention as Earth Day. Strangely enough, the Earth Hour event took place on March 29th. Earth Day is April 22nd. Tomorrow, when we wake up from this creepy-ass hotel we're staying in tonight, we'll cross the border into the great state of Florida. Can we do it? Could we potentially make it to our destination in Key West by Earth Day? 23 days on a bicycle to go from Mobile, Alabama to Key West, Florida. We're talking about the last 1,000 miles. That's a daily average of 44 miles. Plus, we already know about a lot of people we're going to meet and interview in different cities. Can we finish a cross-country bicycle ride documenting environmental perspective in one of the first areas that many claim will be the first to go as a result of climate change? None of this has been planned. We left on this ride and seriously wondered after a few days if we could make it across the Nevada state line. There was never a set finish date or deadline. We never wanted these efforts to be a race across the country. We wanted to meet people who could talk to us about their perspective on the environment. So now, to throw a goal date for our finish is freaking me out. When we get to Lake Worth, Florida, we're supposed to meet with some people who identify themselves as environmental anarchists. And in Orlando, we'll meet with the Muslim and Jewish faiths to see how their beliefs teach them about environmental stewardship. As we begin our race across Florida, we meet up with Derek Evans in Tallahassee, where we interview him about Turkey Creek, and we go along for a ride in his FEMA trailer that aims to tell everyone he drives by that the problems in Mississippi and Louisiana aren't getting better. When we leave Tallahassee, our next goal is to dip our front tires in the Atlantic Ocean. The Southern Tier cross-country bicycle route from Adventure Cycling officially finishes or starts in St. Augustine. We learned that it's customary, once you reach the opposite coast that you started from, to dip your tires in the ocean. So we get to check that off our list and head south for Orlando. Okay, get out your Torahs and your Korans. We are getting the last of our religious perspective checked off the list. It's time to ask these faiths some of the same questions we've asked the Native Americans, Christians, and Wiccans. How is your faith interconnected with the earth?
The Jewish faith is interconnected with the earth intrinsically in that we teach constantly about respecting the earth. One of the big catchphrases in Reform Judaism is Tikkun Olam.
Tikkun Olam is a phrase which sort of encapsulates several different concepts within the Torah. Tikkun Olam literally could be translated as to repair the world, to fix the world, to correct the universe. The idea is that creation is still a work in progress. It's still going on. And we have an obligation to assist in continuing that work.
The Muslims interconnected with the earth, we could understand this when we go back to the first early beginning of life on earth, before earth actually, on heaven, when God told the angels that he is going to create a human to be his deputy on earth. So what the angels said, are you going to put somebody who will mischief in earth, who will corrupt the earth? He said, I know, but you don't know. And he created Adam, and he created also Eve from him. And later on, he asked the angels to prostrate, to greet Adam in such a way. So all angels did, except devil. And later on, God told Adam, this is your enemy, who is going to corrupt the earth. So watch out and be careful. So from the beginning, earth, God wants Adam and his children to occupy the land, the earth, and to do the best, not to corrupt the earth. Where God
puts Adam in the garden and says, I'm giving you everything on this earth. Now it's your turn. You take care of everything, and if you don't take care of it, then future generations will have nothing.
Tu B'Shvat is essentially the New Year of the trees. Judaism traditionally has 4 New Years.
Not only is it has it become in modern practice a celebration of trees, but a celebration for the whole environment.
Originally, this was where you counted years for food-producing trees. According to the Torah, we may not eat the fruit of a tree the first 3 years that it produces. And the question was, in ancient times, when do you start counting? Well, you start counting from Tu B'Shvat. Over the centuries, however, this emerged into a much broader concept. The New Year of the Trees became a time where not only did you count the years for the trees that you already had, but you focused on planting trees.
I was taught that trees have spirits and that they are elders, and that because they can't move, they have to witness everything that humanity does. They see women who are raped, they see people die, they see wonderful things, children at play, children climb on them, and that because of that they take our stress. Not only with the osmolarity of carbon dioxide and oxygen, but also literally if you go and put your spine against a tree, it'll take you stress, because they're our brothers and sisters, or our grandmothers and grandfathers, and that's what they do for us. Because they bear testament and witness to everything that happens on the planet. So for us, trees are probably the most sacred of anything that grows.
When you plant a tree, the prophet says if you know that the end of time is upon you and the judgment day is starting, and you still have a small tree in your hand, go ahead and plant it. Even though you don't think there is time for it to grow or produce anything, it is the intention that matters, that to the last minute you have to be caring and helping the environment.
Wow, I always hear a reference to people have more in common with each other than they don't, and meeting these people has really helped make the case for that. Although we never actually documented someone on our trek saying it, they wouldn't sign a waiver, some people said to us that if Earth's climate is getting warmer, then that is God's will.
There is a lot of confusion about the concept of qadar in Islam, which means that God predestined certain things, or there's God's will. And the idea, how does that conflict or work with individual will and our own freedom of choice?
God's will and human choice. God has 2 wills. The will how he created the whole universe, and he knows what's going on and what will happen in the future as he knew the past. That's his, what we call it,
qadar.
But in your actions, go to the church or go to the casino, that's your choice. Go and grow plants and make the environment green and good. That's one way. Go and burn the whole jungle and destroy people and kill people. That's other way. So it's your choice.
God says in the Torah that we've been given the choice. God sets before us good and evil, life and death, and commands us to choose life, to choose the good so that we can live and so that future generations can prosper.
It's not a tenable claim to say that what's happening is just God's will. We don't live in the world passively that way.
So that wraps up our Muslim and Jewish perspective. So why do it? Why go to the effort to document environmental perspective from different faiths? The drive for this came from an event that Mike and I participated in before we left on the ride. OC ICE, Orange County Interfaith Coalition for the Environment. This event brought people of different faiths and religion together for one day to care for the Creator. The differences of whoever their Creator is get set aside for that day so that all faiths can come together to share what their religions do to care for the Creator, the Spirit, or the planet. With Mike and I, neither of us participate in any faith, yet we were still able to identify with all of the people in the room that we should respect and care for the earth. We looked for this kind of interfaith coalition all over the southern tier of the United States, but we weren't able to find any groups along our route that participated in interfaith environmental activities until we get to Orlando, Florida.
The environment is very, very clear in all faith texts. You know, whether you're talking about Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, any religion you want to talk about, and we can go through, you know, a list, Baha'i. It is very clear in a textual basis that we have a responsibility to care for the earth.
Jesse Glickstein, who runs an organization called FUSE, Faiths Uniting for Sustainable Energy, he referred us to the Muslim imams and Jewish rabbis we met in Orlando and Miami.
We work with faith leadership from all faiths, doing education around the issues of energy conservation and sustainability, looking at different ways we can save energy in our facilities, take action in our own lives, and then also ways that we can advocate with elected officials, letting them know that this issue of clean energy, energy conservation is a moral issue, and in fact, the moral issue of our time.
Slowly, more faiths are seeing the urgency to act and protect their planet.
There really needs to be a sea change in the way we think about right and privilege. As a leader in the faith community, that has to come from me and from my colleagues and my peers.
And we do it both for the environmental reasons as well as for peace building between the different faith groups in Central Florida. We want to bring harmony between the young people and across faith lines, as well as focus their attention, all of them, on planet Earth and the environment that we all share. And that's where they are fascinated, that they all see how in common we all share Central Florida. We share its water, its air, its trees.
It can be a lot of fun when a lot of different faiths are together, and among all the differences we may or may not have, real or perceived, we certainly know that the world is important to us.
I think the faith communities have increasingly spoken up, and people of all faith and colors have agreed in their own ways that we are to be good stewards of the environment.
At this point, the word tolerance isn't even close. Say it with me. Kinship. Come on, say it. Kinship. Brotherhood, love thy neighbor. That is what is going on at these events. Our pedals propel us to Lake Worth, where we're about to meet a few people that identify themselves as environmental anarchists. Now, there are two types of anarchists, violent and non-violent. All the anarchists we're going to meet are more closely aligned with the second definition for anarchy, defined as a person who promotes disorder or excites revolt against any established rule, law, or custom. These folks are fed up with an increasingly corporate, compromising, and ineffective environmental community. Sure, they do things like picket outside of gas stations and attend community meetings to stop development of what rural areas are left in their city, but many of them take a different approach to anarchy.
And pretty soon, at 13, 14 years old, I I flirted that I was a communist. I don't know what that was, a socialist, what that was. But then I ran into anarchism, and I like that. Every anarchist usually has their own take on it, and I have my own. And to me, I'm more of an individualistic anarchist, not a collective guy. I don't like working too many teams. I'm suspicious of working in groups because it becomes a herd, and they say, we got to get consensus, or, we have to. I like that to a certain degree. But sometimes you hopefully have a thing about a more ethical thing that you're doing no wrong to anyone, you're doing right, you're doing no violence, and you got to move forward in spite of the group. So that's where my anarchism comes from.
This is kale, this is broccoli, tomatoes.
Javier volunteers all over his city to get elementary school kids gardening and growing produce that they can take home to their families. While Javier loves what he does, this is his take on anarchy.
I do have my own agenda. When I interact with anybody in town, I always tell people that talk is cheap. I mean, I don't have to pay for anything else. I just go out there and talk to people. And they're either going to listen to me or they don't. But they usually do because I can entertain them. And it's through humor that you can deliver some messages. So what I do when I'm talking with the kids in the tradition of raise a self-righteous little preaching little evangelical Pentecostal, I just turn that around and use it for a positive way. And I talk about the nature, the pollution, the global warming, why the gardening is important, why we need to stop driving our cars and then get on bicycles. And this town is flatland, Florida. Tell your parents, please, tell your parents to stop driving the car. And I tell them, please tell your parents, please tell your parents. And these kids go, they tell me, they come back and they tell me, I just told my mama, I told my daddy. And I said, well, that's good, and see what happens. So, yeah, it's talk is cheap.
So I've been participating in meetings from state, from federal down to local municipal politics, and it's very consistent, it's very repetitive. You can really guess the outcome of this stuff. 100 people show up and have a concern for the community or for the environment, and then a dozen businessmen show up, and they sway the whole vote in their direction. So it's hard to really expect much from elected officials. I love the tradition of anarchy and how it manifests socially. I think for the most part it's been really beautiful. So I like calling myself an anarchist. I don't shy from it. We've kind of carved out a space to really talk about that in this town. Like when Kara ran for commission.
And here to Kara, because I met her, I went to my first globalization rally, and I was the first time that I was surrounded by tens of thousands of people that actually shut down the Capitol and stopped a meeting, and it was very inspirational to me.
So this local group of anarchists, who are also predominantly Green Party members, did something that doesn't often happen. They became so inspired to make environmental change that they rallied to get one of their own in office.
So prior to being in public office, I identified as an anarchist, an activist, an environmentalist.
It was this interesting thing. For the first time, people were like, what's an anarchist? And then, they would be like, well, isn't that a contradiction to be an anarchist and run for city politics? And all of a sudden it was like, now you're getting it. This is the conversation. If it's a contradiction, then why is it a contradiction? Oh, because government doesn't work that well.
So the primary reason I ran for office was to see how it would work to be on the inside. And also just in the process of running for office, you get a lot of exposure to your issues. So through the candidacy, I was able to speak to people. It's one of the rare times you can knock on someone's door and they're very receptive to talking with you because you're not, selling something. You're not asking for their signature on a petition. You're just presenting yourself as a potential candidate or a soon-to-be elected official.
I'm not like a conservative right-wing who just government. I think we need to have government, but governance that's our government, that we directly vote for it, follow or not follow it.
And then when I won, which was a pretty big surprise, now I have the opportunity to see if being on the inside really is more effective or better than being on the outside. And honestly, I wouldn't say it's better. I don't know that I'm getting more done. I think it's important for all activists or radicals to take turns doing things like taking out the trash and sitting in public office. And it's just another job, as part of a spectrum of options for trying to make progressive social change.
So this tree was recognized as a champion specimen of Ficus altissima, lofty fig. You know, the developer that proposed to build here sent in a plan for review that was pretty much curb-to-curb development with more density than it's even zoned for now, which didn't include this tree. The community said, at least as a minimal, we want to protect that tree, and the developer said, no, you know, I don't have to. And so we fought and got a change saying, you know, the fine is $300,000. We cut this tree, but to that developer, $300,000 is about 1 unit worth of development out of 80 units.
Our particular town has the only kind of small town beach left in Palm Beach County, and they want to develop it, and there's not a lot of coastline left that isn't high-rises or condos already. So there's been a big battle for us in the city to see the same type of charm and mom-and-pop stores stay there, and not to see it corporatized, turned into a shopping destination.
If government doesn't work, the government's not sustainable, then we have to seek alternatives. And I think local, municipal, kind of community involvement is the alternative to big empire-driven government.
It's really, really hard for people to challenge the what is perceived as the majority will. And so for them to like step out of the comfort zone of voting in the majority is, I think, socially and emotionally really difficult for people who are in elected office. They don't want to look stupid. They don't want to feel unsupported. They don't want to go out on a limb and maybe not get reelected. They don't want people to not like them. I mean, they live in the city, you know?
The future of the movement for sustainability is, I think, that you get what you fight for. And this little local battle has become really symbolic of that for us, and that we intend on fighting for this lot as a community resource, as an environmental resource for animals in this region, and really for everyone that cares about the planet. You know, if you don't fight, if you don't stand up for what's left in your backyard, then it's hard to imagine a planet where people actually, you know, respect and take care of the place they live.
I think it's about 10% or so of the people, you know, once 10 or 15% of the people feel a certain way, that's when things start to shift. You know, we saw it happen with women's rights. We saw it happen with, you know, with the civil rights. And, we've seen it happen with every kind of conscious evolution that's occurred. And now it's happening again. It's happening again with the earth, which is the most important thing of all, you know, because regardless of race or religion or sex or whatever it is, we all share this planet. We all share this earth together. You know, this is our home. And we need to start erasing those imaginary lines that we create on a map, you know, because we're one. We are one. You know, I didn't grow up recycling. My parents didn't know. They didn't tell me. It's not, I think for a lot of people, it's not that they don't care. That's not true. There's a lot of apathy. But for some people, it's not that they don't care, it's that they don't know. You know, and that's where we all come in. You know, to raise awareness on however we do it, whatever our medium is.
As of yesterday, I officially sold my car, which is a good feeling. It was rendered useless a couple of months ago. I think about 2 months ago. I was driving a monster. It was an SUV, and it was the source of my personal hypocrisy and a great shame to my existence as a bicyclist. So I tried to use it as infrequently as possible to begin with. I had the blessing of having paid it off, and that was perhaps the only reason why I kept it around, to make excuses for myself.
And my family doesn't own a car. All we do is ride bikes everywhere in town, which is, it gets tiring, but it's actually kind of worth it because we save money in gas and we save the environment.
Stop. What's his name?
Ringo.
Ringo.
Yeah, named him Ringo because he's got a ring around his neck, a star at the end of his tail, and he likes to make noise.
How often do you ride like this? And
just every day. I decided just to reduce my carbon footprint and to reduce my expenses, just stop driving. I have 2 cars. One of them runs fine, but I just got sick of paying for insurance and everything like that. And the exercise is wonderful. I do about 25 miles a day. And having the dog with me makes it fun. I mean, it's never a dull moment.
And I hear great stories. You know, it's inspiring hearing about people who are car-free in Miami. There was an article printed a couple of days ago by somebody who'd been doing it for 22 years. I don't feel personally like the last 2 months without a car have been an impediment on my social life or my ability to work, enjoy town, You know, if anything, it's been a blessing, and I love it. I'm going to try and keep it going for as long as possible until my legs wear off or until my friends get sick of me. I guess those are the two conditions.
Albert Einstein said, "Once you know, you have a duty to act." Well, we know. We're talking about it. You know, we're playing it in our music. We're expressing it through our art. You know, through riding bikes. You know, from LA to the Keys. I mean, we're bringing it out there to people. You know, we know, and we have a duty to act. And so we can say, hey, you know, someone needs to step up. Someone needs to be a leader. Well, look inside. You know, that person needs to start with you.
Leaving Miami, today is April 19th. So lucky for us, the goal we've set to arrive in Key West by Earth Day is totally doable. From Miami to Key West is about 161 miles. That's an easy 40 miles a day at this point.
Got a little bit ugly out, but we're starting to get our way down into the Keys. That's right. We're almost done.
After watching so many people close to me suffer with cancer, I became inspired to do this bike ride. It started out as a long list of short goals that would eventually add up to a bike ride through one of the most magical places on the planet. If you don't know, the Florida Keys are a group of 1,700 islands, or keys. These distant neighbors are all sewn into a community via one road, US 1. Portions of an ancient coral reef with very little sand mostly create these islands. These now exposed ancient coral reefs are what many scientists predict will be one of the first places to go as a result of climate change and rising sea level.
From my personal experience, I know sea level's rising. I've watched it happen in my canal. I live right on the water. But I also know that when hurricanes came through the Keys in the 1970s or the 1980s, very seldom did the water get over our canal. But now, every time a storm comes even close, I have water in my entire downstairs living area. So this is something that I personally have experienced change in. Whether people want to accept whether or not sea level is rising, they can just ask the experts. NOAA has been measuring the sea level rise here in the Florida Keys for decades and decades, and the evidence is there. We are getting higher waters more frequently, and with every storm event, it runs into more stormwater runoff and threats.
3 more days.
From Key Largo, we make our way towards Marathon, Florida. It's 50 miles of beauty, palm trees, and some impressive bridges. Some contacts that we've made in connection with the Earth Day events in Key West have helped us secure a place here, in a guest house that is usually used for scientists studying here. And apparently, located right next door, is a bird rehabilitation center. This is some environmental action I have to check out.
Most of the injuries we see every year are pelicans and double-crested cormorants that unfortunately get tangled in fishing line and fish hooks. We actually bought a metal detector last year because a lot of these birds were ingesting fish or bait that had metal hooks attached to them.
Okay, what about the birds of prey?
Well, the raptors we do here, if we have a large raptor or it needs flight reconditioning, then we'll send it to a larger facility that has usually a 100-foot long flight cage. Well, like most of the birds, they all unfortunately hit glass windows, power lines, get hit by cars, even boats. Some people find them offshore just floating on a weed line. We could absolutely let each of these animals that gets injured stand by the side of the road, but luckily there's a lot of caring people that don't want to just see them suffer, and they'll bring them to us, or they'll call and tell us where to find them.
The environmental action that I've seen on this bike ride has blown me away. That is what this bird center represents. People acting to fix the environment. There are so many ways you can help, but the best place to start is in your community. That is where we as individuals can affect the most change. Not the government, not the states, the communities. That is where environmental change needs to come from.
We made it. That's the 7-mile bridge. Broke it.
The city of Key West has several events planned to promote Earth Day. One was that they invited members of a local sports gym and anyone else interested to help us complete our bike ride. The last 10 miles.
Look at that lot of people with us! Yeah!
It was incredible meeting and riding with all of these different people. Upon our arrival in Key West, we even get a police escort, and we finish in the city park, which begins a kickoff day of celebration and recognition. We've met only kind, caring, giving people on this ride. This country is full of us, full of people who care, full of people who want to support this kind of cause, this kind of idea. The city of Key West has also built a recycling thermometer in hopes of getting more people to participate in the efforts. Positioning it right alongside the road at a stoplight lets everybody take a gander at how they're doing with recycling efforts.
Well, we're 8th graders at HOB. We're measuring how much Key West recycles, and we all just want to help out and do as much as we can.
Do you think living down here in such a delicate, fragile environment, it's more important or less important, or you guys are just like everybody else when it comes to the environment?
Well, everybody should recycle everywhere, but Key West, I guess it's a little bit more important because we're worrying about the sea and their environment too, and we don't want to hurt sea animals.
And because it's
plastic bags.
More of a small community, I think it would be easier just for everybody to come together and do it.
As an island, we've generally been pretty environmentally friendly. Also, our economy used to be fishing and shrimping, and now it's a tourism-based economy, so we still consider the environment really important.
Contained within the tiny community of Key West is a huge government-run operation, the NOAA Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary.
Florida Keys was designated as a National Marine Sanctuary in 1990 by an act of Congress. Well, when the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary was designated, it was the first sanctuary to totally surround a community. It was the first sanctuary to have the majority of its waters in state waters. So there were a lot of complex social issues and economic issues that came with it.
If you've never taken note of the government organization NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, now is probably the best time ever.
A lot of people know when they see the NOAA logo, they think of the Weather Service. But they don't realize that we have other line offices that do very important things around the world. NOAA does ocean and atmospheric research. We manage the fisheries around the nation. We map and chart the ocean floor. We help commerce move across our oceans very safely. We have satellites circling the globe that help us give real-time sea surface temperatures. We're able to track hurricanes and storms as they move across the ocean. It's an incredibly diverse agency that uses science to really help formulate management decisions. As our population has grown around the coastal areas of the United States, we've seen more and more pressures on the ocean. We've seen our estuaries, we've seen our coastal environments as well as our marine environments suffer in various ways. And what we're having to do right now is step back, take account of our actions as people, and start giving back instead of taking. And here in the Florida Keys, we set up this nation's first comprehensive marine zoning plan.
At the time of implementation, creating marine zones with specific rules about how the ocean is to be used was met with a lot of anger from the community. People who live in the Keys are down here for a bunch of reasons, one of which is to escape government. So for a federal agency coming into this small community and forcing people to change their lifestyles to protect the environment for the long run was a hard sell. The different types of zoning include no take, no fishing, no diving, and no wake in designated places.
One of the things that marine zoning allows us to do in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary is to still have all of these various activities that are so important to the economy of the area, but that we can still focus on protecting and conserving the resources that are so important to this area. People sometimes lose sight of the fact that you can protect and conserve, but you can still have access to those areas.
For a bunch of fishermen that are used to making a living and being told that you can't fish here, you can't put your lobster traps there, that was really difficult. But those organizations now, when they do open up an area, you know, there's obviously a lot more sea life in the zone than there is someplace else. So I think 10 years later, they're changing their tune a little bit and are more apt to realize it was a positive way to impact the environment.
And these are already resulting in huge changes in fish populations, lobster populations, so we're seeing some major benefits.
Remember in Nevada when we learned about the water shortage in the desert? Remember how the Water Authority fined people for wasting water? This example of the marine zones reminds me of that. It's a government operation mandating that people behave with some level of respect to their local environment. People are angry at first, but sometimes the government has to intervene with ways to protect the local area. So for those who argue that government shouldn't regulate environmental conditions, look at these two examples and think again. Billy Causey was the last person we interviewed on this 3.5-month journey. We get a few days to check out Key West and some time to relax and reflect on finishing this major life accomplishment. This was never going to be a tale of heroic feats. Well, at least not for Mike and I. This journey has been about capturing the pulse of environmental attitudes in the southern United States. There were heroes on this ride, though. Local community heroes that know about the urgency to act. Too many people still believe that their individual actions as consumers don't count and that they don't matter. Well, these people don't think like that, and I can tell you that they are making a difference. You can make a difference as well. You want to clean up the air quality? Ride a bike. You want to conserve water? Ride a bike. You want to save coral reefs? Ride a bike. You want to help stop wars going on in other countries because of our insatiable appetite for oil? Ride a bike. Of course, the bicycle isn't the answer for everything and everyone, but it is a great start. What if more people rode a bike more often? Where would we be? What kind of planet would we live on? Would people like my dad still be fighting the effects of cancer? Would my brother's girlfriend have passed away at age 28 if the world were slightly less toxic? We may never know the answers to those questions. What I know, though, is that local heroes we met on our ride found it within them to act for the greater good, for human health and the health of the planet. Is it in you to become someone who fights for that? Do this. Go to Google, type the name of your city and these words, environmental action, and see how you can get involved at the most effective level, the community. Thank you for watching Project Southern Tier.
There is a restaurant by my house, it's called a Hungry Hunter. Kind of reminds me of the wilderness and rolling thunder. Pulled up ashore, then run outside. Just found another new reason to be alive. Don't need no car, cause I got my feet. No shame in running naked down your neighborhood street, because I'm running, but yet I'm strutting myself to see.